options that we can do with casting. As far as the wall, I'm not going to say that any of these particular textures are the ones that would be perfect for the spot, but it's just an example of, kind of the variables we can work with. We could do the wall so it looks like quartz or some kind of a semi-precious stone, and we can model that and see how it turns out. I'm going to send out some examples. Like this is a faux quartz panel that is cast. The back of this is mirrored. It's been sprayed gray. There'll be 2 of those. So this is an example of like engineering a quartz. The quartz also can be done transparent, so you could wrap it. It can be done as a veneer. The one that's going to pick up the most light is going to be an engineered surface that's kind of a reflector surface. You notice how flashy these are. Imagine like a reflector on a bicycle. It's got these little louvered angles. These are artistic kind of versions of that. You can see this is just a transparent panel, but it picks up a tremendous amount of light. So this would be something if you maybe wanted to do some layers, you can see through them, maybe backlight. There's going to be samples where they have been sprayed, so they're opaque. Now these 3 here are an example of where we're taking one of these finishes and we can laminate it over an object. These are 1.5 inches wide and deep. And when you do this, you can also leave a little cavity in here. You can see how light can pass through that. So you could even run lights or wiring down through this section, and they would show through this little back section and side light the piece. Horizontal lines and diagonal lines pick up the most light. It's just the nature of the lensing. Vertical doesn't, although vertical seems to be most intuitive with the space. Even though these are continuous patterns, I was just using a mold that already had to build these. We have a custom pattern. For instance, like these have just a little bit of jitter in them, and just to keep them from being super mechanical. So this would be an example of mild jitter, let's say. These are mechanical. I'm going to send these out. These weren't for the project, but I just had them in stock. These, you can see, these are very straight lines. They're very precise. And over here, since I don't have a sample, but I'm just going to show you this. Like, this would be like kind of a reimagined knot in wood. So similarly, we could have maybe the long length of it be straight, and then there's occasionally a twist. And to show this, you can see how these have kind of a bending like a wood grain, but it's like a metallic gem-like wood grain. It'd be very pretty. So we can imagine a long 12 or 14 foot piece of this having kind of an undulating pattern that occasionally has maybe a little knot. So that's some way that we could pick up some light, because the light's going to pick up on these angled sections. But in the future, we can start working on that if you're attracted to this idea. I went with just one color for these, just because I wanted to keep all things the same. This is an example of like a nickel silver, but just as well as these are very bright and very glitzy, that the same systems can be done. This is a transparent mirrored organza. You can see how kind of dark and muted this is. So even though what you're receiving is some very bright, happy type reflective colors, they can also be done in very muted tones like this. Some of the depth of the piece may not have to be built out of these alone, regardless of what texture's on these. Let's just call this the object. We could probably mill some of the furthermost panels and then finish them so that they have this texture and finish, but you can see how this is just milled, and the eye wouldn't know really where you've transitioned from just a built-up milled panel to this more exotic, laminated, more gem-like thing. So we could discuss where we think that we're maybe wasting materials in kind of the more shadowed areas of the piece. I cut these. These are just samples from a previous piece. figured I'd just send them off just so you can kind of get an idea of different shapes. This would be a good example of where, say, you might have a length of copper or silver, just very solid, and occasionally there'll just be a little flutter of a mark, and those marks can, you know, move around the piece. But I just want to send those along. These weren't officially custom samples. You can see I just cut them up. Also, I have this, which is kind of it's a linen based kind of soft granite, but somewhat fabric-y vibe. So we can do things that are much softer than these super bright things if we want to engineer something that's more delicate and has just more, you know, we can even flock with velvet, so it can be much softer than a lot of these reflective finishes. And that's pretty much it.